Hello traders out there in Traderland, D7 here with Grok Trade, and I'm going to be giving you a 60-second recap of what happened last week in the broad markets. The major U.S. stock indices all had and experienced fluctuations throughout last week. The S&P 500 briefly reaching an all-time record high before crashing back lower. Very turbulent last week as the month has been. We also have key economic indicators like the initial jobless claims, housing starts, and the Philly Fed business index were released, showing mixed results across the board. And the Fed officials, including some big names, made statements that influenced market sentiment. So we had a lot of volatility. The energy sector saw fluctuations also, with oil and gas prices impacting related stock, and gold prices remained relatively stable, while silver and copper experienced some volatility, meaning they went down. And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies saw modest gains, but no real big news there. Notable stocks move. This was Nvidia had a major intraday reversal, while other stocks showed some mixed results. And looking at the broad markets as a whole, starting off with the spider and looking at the weekly chart, shares a lot with us. Guys, I want you to pay special attention to what I'm getting ready to show you. We have a nice uptrend, higher swing highs. See this? Higher swing lows. Everything looks great, right? It does. Do you see the last, what is that? Last 10 months or so, we're going higher and higher. But what's been happening to volume as we're rising? Volume is going down. That's like a jet going straight up and letting off on the throttle. So it goes up, and what happens when you do that for too long? It stalls, reverses, and drops. But what's very, very interesting to me here, if we zoom in, this trend line, at one point last week, we were up. The S&P 500, the 500, the bluest chip companies out there today in the U.S. market, up. And then by week's end, come crashing back down. And guess where it closed? Right at that trend line. Right at the trend line. If I go to a line chart, you'll see this. Look at this. On a line chart, follow this line. One hit, two hits. You see that? Three hits. It's right there. It's right there. Four hits. This is our fourth hit at this line. At one point, we were over it, but we came back down. Let me show it to you again. We were over it. We got an upper shadow. We come right back down. In other words, what am I saying here? I am saying on the weekly chart, the S&P 500, one of the major, most important indices that we have right now, has had virtually a 10, I'm guessing here on numbers here, but a 10-week rally. And it's happening on less and less volume. And now we hit resistance. We tried to break over resistance, and we closed back down exactly at resistance. This is happening in the confines of a rising wedge, which is more bearish than it is bullish. And we're at resistance, and we're showing resistance. Let me ask you, what do you think should happen next in the markets? So this is looking very bearish to me. If you take a look at the NASDAQ, let's look at the Qs. Last week, but the week before, not last week, but the week before, we closed over a major area. Big trend line, closed over it. Very, very bullish. We're up a number of weeks. We break over resistance. This week we went up, and now we have what type of reversal pattern? Candlestick pattern. It's called a shooting star. We have a shooting star bearish reversal candlestick pattern. That's in the makings right now, but we're above a trend line. Will we close below this trend line? If so, look for this to bleed out here. Look for this to get kind of nasty. If you look here at the Russell 2000, look how this is relatively much weaker than we see in the S&P and the NASDAQ. So why is that? Usually small caps are the ones that will leave the charge to one side or the other. Russell's 2000, smaller cap, meaning higher risk. Smaller cap, higher risk. What you will see, our investors will come in and start unloading their risky assets, and they'll pile into something that's less risky at the market high. So if you're a market high, let's get out of the risky stuff, get into more traditional thing. Russell 2000, smaller cap, riskier, down. Several weeks ago, we closed below a support line, pretty bearish. We're caught up in the moving averages. But if you go to the S&P 500, we are way over the moving average. So you look at this. So if you go here, Russell 2000, showing of weakness compared to the markets. But if you go to the diamonds, if you look at this, we show also relative weakness. But do you see this big rally we got here? The question is, are people getting ready to come in and start buying up these large cap companies that'll be safer? Qs are rallying up because of AI. That's bringing the S&P up also. Financials are very important to me. If we look at the financials, you can see this, that 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 weeks ago, we broke areas of support and we're under pressure. However, this last week, very, very bullish on finances. So will we see a rally commence? We could. Let's find out if we can hold here. Now on the weekly chart on the S&P, it looks like we should be pulling back. So very important that we watch this. US dollar weekly chart, big time caught up into the apex of this symmetrical triangle. We're coming into an area of resistance. Watch for huge movement at some point on the US dollar. Gold sold off. Silver sold off. A lot of volatility happening in gold and silver. VIX is still very low. We're just barely over 13 right now. It's a very low relative number as far as fear is concerned. You'll know that the markets might be topping out as soon as fear starts popping up. It gets over 15, gets over 20, gets over 25. When you know that, man, you've got some big time fear happening and some big drops happening in the markets. If you look here at Bitcoin last couple weeks have been under a lot of stress, and we're sitting at 64. So there it is. NVIDIA is the big runner. It's a big company out there and trading in the markets right now. NVIDIA is doing very well. NVIDIA is one of these things that a lot of individuals are investors in NVIDIA, and more starting to pile in. Just be careful at these extreme highs that you're seeing in NVIDIA and Apple and other big tech companies. They have been running up. Look for them to start simmering down, and I think that would be something that we'll just have to pay very close attention to. Pay special attention to the Qs. Watch them in a relationship with the financials, the banks, and indices. Watching those together in the VIX, seeing if the VIX starts to pop. Because let me just read between the lines here and tell you what I'm looking for. If I see financials start to plummet, and at the same time I see the VIX shooting higher, that's going to yank the rest of the market down, especially if I have confirmation with the Russell 2000. If that and when that happens, that's going to be a real good tell of what we can experience going into the future. Furthermore, our first day that we have that the Dow drops by more than 1,000 points, let that be an arrow over the bow. Let that be thunder in the distance. Let that tell you that bad things are getting ready to happen. Those little flashes in the pan, those 1,000 plus point down days are brutal when they happen. It'll rally 800 plus points the very next, and you'll forget that we even had that down day. Not us. I've lived through a lot of these bear markets, and that always happens right when a top has already had been put in place. So you'll know a top had been put in place once you get one of those days, especially if they have a major drop and they close the markets, which happens. The indices have these stop measures in place. If the market drops at a certain percentage at a certain amount of time, they will just kill the markets to keep a bloodbath from commencing. Anyway, if I've earned a like, it doesn't cost you anything to give me a like. It's just a hit of the button to give me a like. It doesn't cost you a thing. This is the last video you'll ever see from me if you're not already subscribed. If you subscribe, you'll see some other videos, and if you find them useful, you can stay subscribed, and if you don't, you can always unsubscribe. So take care. We'll catch you guys later. Bye. Guys, why are you still here? You just watched my video and now you're still lingering around. Might as well be with you now that I have your undivided attention. Listen, if you haven't done so yet, I highly recommend putting in a foundation of trading, your foundation of trading through a mentor. For learning to fly a plane, you wouldn't just go through ground school before you start flying in the friendly skies. What you would be doing, though, is going up first with your flight instructor. Same thing if you're going to learn to ride a bike, you better have somebody behind you helping you ride a bike. Surgery, you're not going to read a few books and do heart surgery. So every principle and with being guided by a mentor, let finances be this. If you are a trader, you from amateurs to professionals. Mentoring will do that for you. Anyway.